A mountain is not climbed in one giant leap. It is conquered step by step, breath by breath. In life, we often wait for a perfect moment, a great opportunity, or a sudden transformation, but real change begins in silence, in consistency, in the smallest of efforts. Just as a single drop of water can hollow a stone not by force, but by persistence, so too can the smallest actions, repeated with awareness, reshape your life. You don't need to do everything today, you only need to begin. Discipline is not intensity for a day, it is intention lived every day. Take the first step, and then another. The path will reveal itself. A mountain is not climbed in one giant leap. It is conquered step by step, breath by breath. This truth applies not only to the physical world, but also to the unseen path of our own growth and evolution. Often in life, we stand at the base of a towering challenge, be it mental, emotional, or spiritual, and we freeze. We freeze not because we are incapable, but because we believe the journey ahead demands a level of transformation that feels impossible to attain in our current state. We wait for strength before we begin, not realizing that it is the very act of beginning that generates the strength we seek. In the monastery, when we sweep the floor, we are not just cleaning dust. We are training the mind to be present. The motion is simple, one hand, one broom, one stroke. But when done with full awareness, that action becomes a form of mastery. This is the essence of progress. It is rooted not in complexity or grandeur, but in simplicity performed with presence. When you learn to take care of the small things with great attention, the bigger things start to shift on their own. In modern life, we are surrounded by noise, by the illusion that speed is equivalent to progress. But true growth is quiet. It does not announce itself with fireworks or grand declarations. It happens in the stillness, in the space between effort and patience. One small decision, choosing water over soda, choosing 10 minutes of silence over 10 minutes of distraction, choosing to stand up and stretch instead of staying motionless. These things, when done once, seem insignificant. But done daily, they change who you are. Imagine a single drop of water falling onto a rock. The first drop makes no visible difference, neither does the second nor the third. But after thousands of repetitions, the surface of the stone is changed forever. Not because the drop is powerful, but because it is consistent. The same applies to your habits, your choices, your mindset. You do not need force, you need rhythm. You need the courage to return to the practice again and again without demanding instant results. There is a principle in martial arts that says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. What this means is that by moving with intention and awareness, your actions become more precise and over time, more effective. This principle holds true in all aspects of life. Do not rush to change everything. Change one thing slowly and allow that one change to ripple outward. The smallest movement, if it is rooted in the right direction, can shift the trajectory of your entire life. Many people ask, how can I be more disciplined? The answer is not to do more. It is to do less, but do it every day. Discipline is not about volume. It is about devotion. When a monk lights the incense, he does not ask whether it will change the world. He does it because it is part of his path. The same applies to you. Tie your progress not to the outcome, but to the practice. When your identity becomes intertwined with your small daily rituals, transformation becomes inevitable. You do not need to be extraordinary to begin. You need only to be honest with yourself and with the step in front of you. Ask yourself, what is one thing I can do today that aligns with who I want to become? Do that one thing, and then do it again tomorrow. In time, you will look back and see that you have crossed a great distance without ever needing to run. The illusion that change must be dramatic is one of the greatest obstacles to real growth. It keeps people stuck, waiting for motivation, for energy, for a sign. But the truth is, movement itself generates momentum. When you start walking, even if your pace is slow, the path begins to unfold. You gain clarity not before the journey, but through the journey. Each step teaches you something the previous one did not, and it is in these micro lessons, these tiny moments of decision, that your character is carved. The strength of a person is not measured by how far they leap, but by how steadily they walk. Consistency in small things builds trust in the self. When your mind learns that you follow through on your intentions, even when they are small, it begins to believe in you. That belief becomes a foundation for confidence, for inner stability, and for deeper growth. One act of presence, repeated daily, is more powerful than 1,000 scattered bursts of effort, just as a single drop of water can hollow a stone, not by force but by persistence. The human spirit is also shaped not by rare moments of brilliance, but by repeated, conscious effort. Most people search for breakthroughs, for sudden transformations, for the one moment that will change everything. But life rarely works that way. Change that lasts is not built in the intensity of a single day. It is built in the quiet repetition of ordinary moments. What you do daily is more important than what you do occasionally. It is your rituals, your rhythms, your return to the same practice again and again that creates the foundation for who you become. The bamboo tree offers a powerful lesson. For the first several years, it shows no visible growth. You water it, nurture it, care for the soil, and still there is nothing to see. But under the surface, the roots are growing, anchoring deep into the earth. And then, in just a few weeks, it shoots up meters into the sky. Was the growth sudden? No, the growth was always happening. It simply took time to become visible. This is the nature of internal development. The external world may not see your effort. You yourself may doubt if anything is changing. But beneath the surface, your consistency is laying a foundation strong enough to hold the weight of your future. In the training hall, we do the same movements every day, the same stances, the same breathing patterns, the same strikes. There is no variety for the sake of entertainment. There is only depth, and in that depth we find transformation. The mind resists repetition because it is conditioned to seek novelty, but the body, the soul, the deeper self, they thrive in repetition. Through the repetition of movement, you refine the posture. Through the repetition of thought, you refine the mind. And through the repetition of small daily actions, you refine your life. People often ask how to find motivation, but motivation is like the wind, it comes and goes. What you need is not more motivation. What you need is devotion. Devotion to your own growth. Devotion to your potential. Devotion to the practice, even on days when the results are invisible. Imagine a musician tuning their instrument every day, even if there is no concert. Why? Because when the time comes, they must be ready. Life is your stage, and your habits are your tuning. You prepare not for the applause, but for the integrity of the sound you produce. A river does not argue with the stone. It simply flows around it again and again until the obstacle is worn smooth. This is the strength of small, repeated action. You do not need to confront every challenge with force. Sometimes, softness and patience are the most powerful forms of resilience. You return to your task, to your purpose, without complaint, without drama, and over time, the path clears. What seems immovable begins to shift, and not because you fought harder, but because you returned wiser. It is easy to underestimate small actions, to tell ourselves this doesn't matter, but everything matters. Every time you get out of bed when you said you would. Every time you pause to breathe instead of reacting in anger. Every time you speak truthfully instead of remaining silent. These are not minor decisions. They are threads in the fabric of your life, and when woven daily with care, they create a life of integrity, of strength, of purpose. You do not need to plan every step of the journey. You only need to take the next right step, the next aligned action, the next honest breath. When you do this consistently, the way forward begins to appear. There is a wisdom that arises only when you walk the path, not when you think about it, not when you talk about it, but when you live it. In the silence of repetition, in the humility of showing up, you begin to hear something deeper than your thoughts. You hear your truth, and when you hear that, the need for external validation fades. The mind always wants results, it wants proof, but the spirit knows that real transformation cannot be rushed, that a flower does not bloom faster because you shout at it. That wisdom is not acquired by speed, but by presence. So you breathe, you act, you return, you allow time to do its work, and in doing so, you grow, not just in skill, but in being. Discipline is not intensity for a day, it is intention lived every day. We live in a world that celebrates sudden achievement, dramatic change, and fast results. But real growth is not dramatic. It is deliberate. It is not forged in moments of adrenaline, but in the quiet repetition of actions chosen with care. When you look at a master of martial arts, of music, of life, you are not seeing someone who performed with high energy once. You are seeing someone who showed up with clear intention, consistently, even on the days when the fire inside was dim. Many people think discipline is about controlling the outer world, but true discipline begins within. It is not about force. It is about alignment. When your actions align with your values, when your daily life reflects the person you want to become, then discipline becomes natural. It no longer feels like pressure, it feels like purpose. A disciplined life is not one filled with constant struggle. It is a life where energy is not wasted on decisions that have already been made. When you have decided what matters, you no longer negotiate with distraction or doubt. In the monastery, there is no debate each morning about whether to rise early, to train, to meditate. The decision was made long ago. What remains now is simply the act of honoring it. This is the power of discipline. It removes the need for constant internal negotiation. It creates structure, and in that structure, there is freedom. The freedom to be fully present, the freedom to direct your energy toward growth instead of resistance. One of the greatest misconceptions is that discipline must be harsh, rigid, or unforgiving. But there is such a thing as compassionate discipline. This means holding yourself to high standards, not out of punishment, but out of love for your potential. It means staying consistent not because you fear failure, but because you respect the path. A student who bows before each practice is not doing so to display obedience, but to express reverence for the journey. This same reverence, when applied to your habits, turns routine into ritual. To live with discipline is to understand that every small act has weight. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you sit, the way you breathe, these are not meaningless details, they are expressions of your state of mind. If you train your body to act with mindfulness, if you train your thoughts to return to focus, then over time, you begin to live from a deeper center. Life stops feeling chaotic. It begins to feel intentional. And from that place, true transformation can begin. Discipline is not about removing emotion. It is about moving with emotion without being ruled by it. There will be days when you feel uninspired. There will be moments when the mind says, "Not today." But this is exactly the moment when discipline speaks. Discipline says, "I hear you, but we move anyway." It is the gentle, steady voice that guides you through the storms of your own resistance. And each time you listen to that voice, it becomes stronger. It becomes more natural, until eventually it is no longer something you do. It is something you are. There is a story in every repetition. When you rise early to practice, when you complete a task with full attention, when you speak with clarity instead of reacting in haste, you are telling yourself a story that says, "I can be trusted." Over time, this story becomes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, and from this identity, even greater actions become possible, not because they are easier, but because you now believe they are part of who you are. A master once said, "How you do anything is how you do everything." If you approach the smallest task with care and presence, then you are training yourself to approach all of life that way. If you dismiss the small tasks as unimportant, then you are weakening your foundation. Discipline teaches you that no moment is insignificant. Every moment is an opportunity to embody who you wish to become. You cannot control everything in life. Circumstances will shift, plans will break, emotions will rise and fall, but what you always have control over is how you show up. Discipline is the anchor in the chaos. It is the choice to return again and again to what matters. It is the refusal to be pulled away by ease or distraction, and the quiet commitment to a life that reflects your deepest values. Take the first step, and then another. The path will reveal itself. Most people stand still, paralyzed by the unknown, waiting for clarity before they act. But clarity is not something you wait for. It is something you earn through movement. The path is not something that appears fully lit in front of you. It is something you build beneath your feet, one deliberate step at a time. This is why small steps are powerful. They do not simply move you forward. They create the very direction you are searching for. There is wisdom that arises only through action, a wisdom that thinking alone cannot provide. In the beginning, you do not need to know the entire route. You only need to take the next right step. That step may be small, it may be uncomfortable, it may even feel insignificant, but that step holds within it the potential to unlock the next layer of your journey. Movement creates momentum, and momentum builds confidence. As you continue to move, even without perfect knowledge of what lies ahead, you begin to trust yourself, not because the way is easy, but because you have learned that you can keep going regardless of uncertainty. The reason many people remain stuck is because they confuse motion with preparation. They wait until the conditions are perfect, until every detail is known, until there is no risk. But life does not work in absolutes. There will always be unknowns, there will always be discomfort. The choice is not whether you will feel uncertainty, but whether you will act in spite of it. This is why the first step is so important. It breaks the pattern of hesitation. It shifts your energy from resistance to flow. It transforms intention into embodiment. When we begin training at the temple, we are not told what we will become. We are only told to show up, to bow, to breathe, to move. There is no promise of mastery. There is only the invitation to begin. And in the beginning, the movements are awkward, the breathing shallow, the mind distracted. But over time, with consistent practice, the body adapts, the breath deepens, the mind becomes still. This transformation does not happen in one leap. It happens in 1,000 unnoticed steps. The power lies not in any one moment, but in the fact that we did not stop walking. One of the greatest challenges on any path is the mind's desire to skip ahead. It wants to see results quickly. It wants to leap over the discomfort of the early stages. But this impatience is the very thing that disrupts growth. Every step has its own purpose. The early struggles teach humility. The slow progress teaches patience. The temporary confusion teaches trust. When you honor each part of the journey instead of trying to rush through it, you develop not just skills, but character. And it is character that carries you forward when motivation fades. There is a certain beauty in walking without knowing exactly where the road will end. It cultivates presence. It forces you to be where you are instead of where you wish you were. And in that presence, something subtle begins to shift. You start to notice the details you missed before. You begin to understand that the journey itself is the teacher. The discomforts are lessons. The detours are corrections. The obstacles are mirrors showing you where your work still lies. Walking slowly does not mean walking without purpose. Sometimes slow steps are the most deliberate. Sometimes the pause before the step is as important as the step itself. There is no need to rush. There is only a need to be sincere. One honest step taken in alignment with your values is more powerful than 100 hurried ones taken out of fear or pressure. Do not confuse speed with progress. Progress is a deepening, not a racing. There is a calm strength that develops when you no longer depend on guarantees. when you are no longer motivated solely by outcomes, but by the integrity of the action itself. You act because it is right, you move because your heart says move, you continue because your path calls you forward. This is how you develop trust, not in outcomes, but in your own ability to respond, adapt, and keep going. The more you move forward with presence, the less you fear what is ahead, because you are no longer relying on what happens. You are relying on who you are becoming through each step. So, do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for the energy, the clarity, or the confidence to arrive before you begin. Begin, and all of those things will follow. Begin with what you have. Begin where you are. It is not about changing everything overnight. It is about changing one small thing today and honoring that change with your full attention. Each breath you take with awareness is a step. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you take another. Each moment you act in alignment with your values, no matter how small, you walk further along the path. And one day, without even realizing it, you will look back and see that those small steps have taken you somewhere extraordinary, not because the path was easy, but because you had the courage to keep walking. Your transformation does not begin with a leap. It begins with a step, and that step is waiting for you now.